What's good, everybody? You know who it is. Goody Beats with the coach.
Hey everybody.
And we're here doing a special video on Ramadan fitness.
Ramadan fitness, that's it.
Or fitness during Ramadan.
Yeah.
But before we get started, guys, I want to clear up some things. I want to first off say that I am not a Muslim.
Nor am I.
And nor do we claim to be experts on the Islamic faith. So just want to clear that up.
I think that clears the air.
Okay, so let's get started, guys. What we do know is fitness, Clinton and I, and we know the basics of Ramadan. So we're going to talk about some of the questions that we had from my Instagram. So if you guys obviously already know this, I put a picture on Instagram and I asked you guys, does anybody have any questions in relation to the Ramadan coming up as far as
now,
fitness and nutrition?
Before we get into the questions, give everybody a little background. Folks who are watching this who don't know.
Correct. Yes, absolutely correct. So for those who don't know what Ramadan is, it's the 9th month of the Islamic calendar. And people who are participating in it, particularly Muslims, so don't want to mess up anything, guys, because this is very important. Very important. You will not drink any liquids or eat food or participate in any sexual intercourse from pre-dawn to sunset for the whole month. So if we were doing that here where we live in Austin, Texas, it would be from June, Friday the 17th to July, Thursday the 18th of June to Friday the 17th of July. That's 30 days. And our pre-dawn would start approximately somewhere between 4:40 in the morning to about 8:40 p.m.
Now this is critical. When Ramadan falls in the summer, you've got longer days. So it's depending on where you're watching this from, you're going to have access to your own calendars, and you're going to know when pre-dawn and sunset are for you. And so everything that we talk about, we're going to talk about Austin, and we'll talk about times if I were going to eat on this schedule, but obviously go based on your own calendar.
Correct. So myself and the coach are going to give some advice and some tips on what you can do as far as fitness/nutrition during this time. But first, let's answer some of the questions that I got from my Instagram when I posted that I was going to do this Q&A. So let's start off with the first question. It says, how does Ramadan affect a participant training, a person who's participating in Ramadan, how does it affect their training routine?
It depends on how they're eating. You know, we've talked about this before, and you all have seen Logan talk about this.
Yeah, i.e. protein intake and fluid.
Okay.
This is kind of what he's narrowing it down to.
That works. That's good. So obviously there's no fluid intake at all during the day. So until sunset, there's no fluid intake. If you're used to doing CrossFit, you're doing metabolic conditioning in the mornings, you're not going to be able to do that. You're not going to have an opportunity to get rehydrated before sunset unless you want to drastically change your workout. Where you would be working out in our time, 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning. So it would change fluid intake because you're going to want to compress. You've got about, in Austin, we've got about 7 hours to get fluids in. Mm-hmm. If you're working out intensely, you're going to want to try to get 2.5 liters to 4 liters of water. Or for those of us in the States, it's you're looking at a couple quarts to a gallon of water in that overnight period.
Yeah.
If it were me and I wake up in the middle of the night, there's a prayer that happens overnight. I would probably make sure that I got my fluids in there. Electrolytes are going to be key here because you're going to want to retain as much of the fluids as you can. If you eat too, and we'll get into clean eating later on, but if you eat too clean, you're going to run out of, you won't have enough electrolytes to hang on to water. You're not going to want to do a lot of intense cardio.
Yeah.
No fasted cardio in the mornings. If you do, it needs to be low intensity stuff. And I'm talking 50 to 65% of your maximum heart rate. If you don't know how to calculate that, look it up because you should. But really low intensity cardio. Now would be the ideal time to do that because you can't expend a bunch of energy. It's going to be 12 hours before you can have any sustenance. In fact, it's more than that. It's, in this case, 16 hours.
Yeah.
Protein intake doesn't really change. I think your requirements are your requirements. There are a number of studies, and you can look these up, that show that you don't have to spread protein out throughout the day. your body will use it. There's no rule, there's no hard and fast rule that says you can only use 35 grams of protein in a sitting. That's not true. That said, spread it out as much as you can overnight, because you don't want to get too full and blow it out and then not get your macronutrients in for the day once you do eat in the evenings.
Okay.
That all makes sense?
It does. And then he also asked another question, which is a good one, which what you were going into. It says, do they change the type of training they do due to Ramadan?
So I personally would. I would. It's, for me, this may be an opportunity. I think there's two approaches you can take, and I saw a question about, can you bulk on Ramadan or not? And so let's just talk about that one as well. There's one later on that talks about bulking.
Okay.
You can. You absolutely can. You can get your calories in any time of the day. Now, personally, it would be easier to take this opportunity and do a cut. You got 30 days. If you've been training hard, maybe you do a deload week to start the process off, and then you've got 3 more weeks to come in and get acclimated. I would personally cut. This is what Ramadan looks like to me, and what I think that we may be forgetting is that it looks like intermittent fasting.
Yes.
There's a ton of data out there on intermittent fasting. John Berardi, Martin Burkhan, Brad Pilon, and the Warrior Diet. So Brad Pilon, Burkhan both have books. Berardi's got a great blog at Precision Nutrition, and the Warrior Diet book has been around for probably 25 years now. These are all variations on intermittent fasting. There's a ton of research that talks about intermittent fasting. Now they're really pitching it for weight loss. Martin Burkhan's is lean gains. You all have seen these things. So the research exists for fat loss. I would take advantage of it if it were me personally. I might do a keto run. It would be very easy to establish ketosis 16 hours without food. You'd need to balance your water out. You need to make sure you're getting enough of your electrolytes in the evenings, enough sodium to make sure you're hanging on to things. You can, if you do that and you're going lower carbohydrate or lower calorie and use this as a cut, you're not going to want to do a lot of volume in the gym. You want to lift heavy. So one of the things that people forget is when they're going to cut, in the 80s, 90s, and even the early 2000s, people want to lose weight. They do high reps, low weight, high reps. That's what you hear. Yeah. But there are a number of studies that show if you're not lifting heavy, you're not lifting intense, your body will not hang on to muscle tissue. And so those of you who do want to diet this month, lift heavy. Bring your weights up and your reps down. Get in that 5-6 range. If you want to bulk, you can. You're going to have to get your calories in, and you need to decide how you're going to do that. And we can talk a little bit more about that later on. If you're eating enough calories to replenish your glycogen every single night, you're not going to lose that glycogen during the fast. You're not going to have any liver glycogen. That'll be gone. You're going to live off of that all day. But your muscles aren't going to release that glycogen unless you're performing work. And you're not going to be performing work all day. So when you train, if it's in the evening, and ideally you would train in the evening with this schedule, you should have plenty of fuel for those workouts. And then you'll activate muscle protein synthesis after the workout by eating enough.
Yeah. Yep.
Did I answer it?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Next question. Should you avoid training, and if not, should you avoid training, and if, I think he said not, what he meant to say is not, what forms of training could you undertake?
I think anything that you don't go in the glycolytic pathway too much. I don't think you should avoid training. I think that's a mistake. That's why you're watching this channel. That's why you subscribe to the other channels that you subscribe to. I personally, and you would agree, I think not training is a mistake.
Yeah.
You're not going to have a lot of fuel for intervals unless you're doing them at the end of the day, right before your refeed, or before your first meal and prayer. You're not going to have fuel for a lot of endurance training. You can do it. You can do it if you're adapted to training on low carbohydrate or adapted to fasted training. It's a little too late to get adapted to it now, but you can think about it for later. I wouldn't stop training. I would focus on the weights and then reduce the volume. Go based on how your body feels. You're going to get in there and you're going to notice that you look depleted. You might be a little dehydrated by the time that it rolls around to get to the gym. Don't overdo it. When I say don't get into that glycolytic pathway, if you're eating enough carbs, you can. But when I talk about that pathway, I'm really talking about that. It really starts about 8-10 reps when you start feeling that burn, and you get into about that 15 and more rep range. You're really going to be chewing up a lot of your muscle glycogen, creating a lot of lactic acid. You're going to need water for that cycle, and you're not going to have a ton of body water at that point. I personally would probably lift heavy the entire month. That's just me. The only thing I really wouldn't do is I don't know that you'd have fuel for a CrossFit style workout. The metabolic load that you're putting on your body,
You wouldn't.
Too much.
No, which is a good segue into this next question. So it says, if one's goal is to lose fat loss, how does one approach Ramadan's diet and exercise-wise? Considering one can't eat or drink until 4 in the morning and then 9.
After 4 in the morning.
4 until 9 p.m.
Right. I don't think that's a problem. What this looks like to me is a 24 intermittent fast, a 20-hour fast, 4-hour feeding window. In Austin, it could be it's a 17/7, I guess, if you wanted to maximize everything. I think you do it. So at the end of the day, we all know that calories in, calories out do matter. I'm not saying it's the only thing, but they do matter. And so you can set up a fat loss diet for this. The benefits that everyone will tell you about on intermittent fasting is that you're more insulin sensitive. When you do eat, you have nutrient partitioning. The carbs go where the carbs need to go. The fat goes where the fat needs to go. You activate muscle protein synthesis. In Martin Berkhan's early stuff, and he and Brad Pilon really started the whole intermittent fasting thing as far as I can tell. Lyle McDonald wrote about this. You have a greater mTOR response, and you'll have to look these terms up because we're going to run out of time. You'll have a greater mTOR response. You're going to have a greater muscle protein synthesis response if you come in fast after training. So I think you can have fat loss. You need to set your calories up the right way. You need to pick a window and eat within that. If you train in the evenings, you have a meal, you have a dinner, or your breakfast is your post-workout meal. I'd probably do something pretty light right there because about 90 minutes later, I'm going to be looking to eat again.
Yeah.
And then I might have some heavy protein before bed, maybe some calcium caseinate protein, or in this case, cottage cheese, which is the exact same protein source. Eggs are good. They take forever to digest. Something on my belly before I go to sleep. Then you got to wake up again to pray before dawn. I'd have a meal before that. I'm already up. I'd have something prepared and something ready. That's 4 feedings. And if you have a 2,000 calorie diet, maybe you're 160 pounds, you're eating 2,000 calories a day to lose weight. That's 4 meals.
Yeah.
And then by the time you go to eat dinner again, you're probably burning fat for fuel. I can almost guarantee that if you checked your ketone levels, you'd be out of carbs in your liver, and you'd be burning fat for fuel for the second half of the day.
Yeah. Is it possible if you try hard enough to lose 15 pounds in 20 days?
No. God, you can do it in 2 weeks with losing water weight.
Okay, so it is.
Yeah, I mean, when we take you on a keto run, what do you lose in the first week?
Yeah, I lose about close to 10 pounds.
10 pounds in a week?
Yeah, and that's just water though.
Yeah, it is possible. Don't get stupid.
Yeah.
Don't bring your calories so low that you're going to cost yourself muscle. It doesn't make a difference how many pounds you burn if you look the same. You just look like a smaller, soft version of you. So you depending on your body weight, half of that's water. You're going to lose a lot of water. You're going to lose glycogen. So your body's going to hold on to, I think it's 2.3 grams of water for every gram of glycogen you store.
Yeah.
Guy Logan's size is going to store 450 grams. So a pound of glycogen and then 2 pounds of water just with that. Forgetting the fact that the ketogenic diet that he did previously will flush body water out. So it is possible. Just don't get stupid and burn your muscle. You work too damn hard for it.
Exactly. So those were the questions on Instagram, and then these are some of the questions that I actually have when I did the research for this. These are some of the questions that I would have if I was going to do this.
They look pretty good.
And it says, okay, when should I work out? I work in 8 to 5.
Okay. So if you're working in 8 to 5...
How is this possible? How am I going to do this?
Personally,
are you telling me not to go to sleep?
I'm not saying don't sleep.
Okay. So you tell me, how am I going to do this?
So 2 hours before your pre-breakfast prayer is when I would work out. That's when I would train.
Okay.
I'd go in 2 hours before breakfast effectively. And I would train then. And you want to... The reason why I want to do that is because when I eat, I want everything going where it's supposed to go. I want to... It's called nutrient partitioning.
Yes.
Nutrient timing matters, and so most of you are gonna have carbs.
Mm-hmm.
The best time to have carbs is after your workout. We all know that.
Mm-hmm.
The best time to have protein is after your workout. We all know that. Now, depending on your training level, every time you eat protein, you could stimulate muscle protein synthesis. But I would personally say work out in the afternoons, or it'd be early evening.
Okay, early evening.
That'd be the best time. It's not the end of the world if you work out in the morning, but if you do that, you're going to have a harder time gaining muscle. It will. I promise you this. If you work out intense enough, not so much that you're spent for the rest of the day, you'll hang on to your muscle if you lift in the morning, or if you just have to lift midday. That's not a big deal. Just don't get in there and go so far past. the intensity level that you know you're supposed to keep,
Mm-hmm.
that you're dehydrated all day and you feel miserable. That's not what the experience is about.
Okay. And my next question would be, well, it seems like someone already asked this, obviously, so we should reduce the intensity of the workout. If I'm a CrossFitter, and that's strictly what I do is CrossFit, so
Right.
what do I do?
Yeah, so if you're a CrossFitter,
I'm not a bodybuilder. Let's just in theoretical. We'll ask that next. But I'm a CrossFitter. What do I do?
I think it's time that you work on your core lifts if you're a CrossFitter.
Okay.
And so you're not going to do a Cindy. You're not going to do the pull-up, push-up. You're not going to do the Murph.
What about the WOD?
Well, your WOD, so your WOD may be, and you need to talk to your coach about this, but your WOD, in this case, you need to work on your lifts, your power lifts.
Okay.
I can go in and do singles, doubles, triples, up to 5 reps on anything and not burn a lick of glycogen. You're still in the creatine pathway at that point.
Okay.
And so you could, as a CrossFitter, I'd work on my technique.
Okay.
I'd work on my strength.
Okay.
I'd work on my flexibility and mobility.
Okay.
I probably wouldn't work a whole lot on cardiovascular fitness because you just don't have the fuel for it.
Okay.
Depending on what time you do it. If you do it right before your refeed, you're probably okay because you'll know how hard you can push yourself.
Exactly. Yeah. Makes sense. And now, okay, and I'm a bodybuilder. So now we're talking about me. I'm strictly bodybuilding.
Now, you're not going to train that much different. You really aren't. You're not going to have to change that much. You're going to back your volume off a little bit.
Back the volume, lift heavy.
Lift heavy is my thing. You need to lift heavy.
Okay. Good.
So this morning's leg workout, we were sweating the whole time, right?
Yes.
Probably not going to do that.
Okay.
Right? So I might work on the same things I talked about with CrossFit, with mobility and flexibility and strength. But even if you didn't want to do a strength block for a month, right?
Yeah.
Even if you didn't want to do that, you could do the same workout. You just might need to have an extra rest day in there.
Okay. Yeah, makes sense. So, if bodybuilder, my schedule, guys, is 6 days a week. So what I would take, 3-day split, 3 days on, 1 day off, 3 days on, 1 day off. So what you would maybe do a 2-1, 2-1, 2-1.
Well, you could do a 3 on, 2 off, or a 2 on, 1 off, 1 on, 1 off.
Okay.
That'd be okay. That's a 5-day rotation. You're still in the gym 5 or 6 days a week.
Yeah.
It depends on your volume and your intensity when you're in the gym.
Okay.
If you go in and you wreck it, you might need to wait a couple days before you hit legs again. You know.
Okay.
You could get in there more frequently if you just reduce the volume while you're in there.
Okay. Next question that I would obviously ask is, what food should I be eating? Do I need to change up my diet?
I think you eat what you enjoy. If you want to trim up, then you can clean it up. It's hard.
Okay, well let's say I'm cutting.
Okay.
And I'm going into Ramadan.
All right. If you're cutting and you're going in, I think that you.
What do I need to eat?
Are you cutting? You're gonna. What do you want? You want carbs? No.
Yeah. I mean.
What I'll say is if you're cutting, you're gonna want to keep it clean.
Okay.
Let's talk about this. So at the very least, the meal that you have before your final prayer, before your fast begins, I think that meal needs to be fat and protein only.
Okay.
I don't want a blood sugar spike in the morning. You went to sleep for a few hours, probably 6 if I did the math right, and you've burned through some of that liver glycogen. I don't want to put any more in there because I want you producing ketones for your brain later on in the day. I don't want any carbs in that first meal. I personally would like that to be a fat and protein meal only.
Mm-hmm.
Now, post-workout, depending on what your goals are, depending on what your coach or you decide you're going to set your macros up at, just clean it up. Clean it up. Eat vegetables, your tubers, your rice, things like that. You can eat lean sources of protein if you're going to have carbs. If you're not going to eat a lot of carbs and you're going to want fattier sources of protein. If you want to cut, you're doing the exact same thing. It's really not that different.
Yeah.
You're just doing it at different times. Those first couple meals after the gym, if you are having carbs, those are the key times to get carbs in. If you have a third one before bed, I don't think you need a lot of carbs before you go to sleep. I'm not saying that carbs do not make you fat because they don't. I'm telling you that right before you go to bed, I'd like that insulin level to go ahead and come down and get some fat with that meal to slow down the digestion of that protein. I want food in your belly as long as you can have it while you're sleeping because I want that protein helping you recover.
I think another good point is when you're talking about fats and proteins, I just want to throw it out there that Muslims do not participate in eating pork or alcohol, and bacon
Bacon's pork.
Bacon's okay. So pork, yeah, they don't. They don't eat that, so
Okay.
you obviously cut that out of your diet.
If you,
Already.
yeah, it's already out of the diet.
It's already out of the
Yeah.
diet, so just
There you
we're not saying to eat this. Like, don't eat that. So we talked about, okay, if I'm cutting, what if I'm bulking? Which
You
I
can-
could find being a problem.
Well, you can do it. You
Because
can do it.
I say, Coach, what do you? I eat every 3 hours. What do I do?
Well, that's one way to bulk.
I don't want to lose my gains.
That's one way to bulk. You can eat every 3 hours. That's one way to do it. The whole reason that,
What do you mean? That's the way to do it.
that's one way to do it.
Oh,
Eating every
okay,
3 hours
okay.
is one way.
Obviously
to
can't
That's
do
what-
it-
You can't do it on
here.
Ramadan, right? There are other. We always talk about this. There's more than one way to skin a cat. There's always going to be a different path
Okay.
to get where you want to go.
So what do I do? You have a standard guy, me,
Okay.
work 8 to 5,
Work 8 to 5. You
and
can't eat until
I am
evening.
bulking, and I need to gain as much muscle as
All right.
possible, and I'm going into this.
Okay,
month.
so well, you're going to have to hit it pretty hard at the gym, and it's going to be tough. I'm not going to lie to you about that.
Okay.
You're going to have to lift as hard and heavy as you can do. I don't care what your excuse is. You're going to have to train in the evenings because I don't want. If you're going to bulk, you're not training in the mornings. You've got about an 18-hour window that you can. That the protein you eat can help activate muscle protein synthesis, and you don't want to burn 16 of it up by fasting every
Yeah,
day. So
exactly.
you're working out at night. We're
Okay.
done though. That's it. Then your diet matters, and so I just talked about 3 meals before bed,
Mhm.
and then 1 meal sort of mid-sleep, because after that last prayer you could go back to sleep.
So am I setting alarms?
Well, yeah,
Waking
you'll
up?
have alarms because you have prayer times.
Okay.
So you'll have alarms, and you'll be waking up. That first meal after training is going to be a big one. I probably would do some very easy digesting carbs for that first meal, something real light.
Like?
Rice,
Okay.
sushi, not sushi rice. Do jasmine rice. It digests. It's got a higher glycemic index.
Okay.
I want high glycemic carbs. If you're eating fruit, I don't want you eating berries. I want you eating a banana.
Good. Those are the type of things that
Right.
I'm sure they're going to want to know.
That's a good point.
What
I didn't
kind
think
of-
about that.
What
Well,
kind of carbs?
so
You know,
you're
tell
gonna
me,
do
they
you're
wanna
gonna do
know.
your white potato instead of a sweet potato. This is not a good time for you to be eating oatmeal. You know,
Okay.
now, because you're bulking, you're probably a little more loose, and so now you can have some of that sugary stuff, and sugar is going to add to the glycemic index of the food.
Okay.
You can have those things. It's that first meal. I want simple carbs.
Okay.
If you're going to eat complex carbs, they need to be high glycemic stuff. No pastas. You throw a rice, and I think the glycemic index of jasmine rice is higher than white bread.
Okay.
It's going to spike that insulin real fast. Going to spike that blood sugar real fast.
Okay.
That will set you up for success out of that first meal. Now that second meal, I care less about the glycemic index. But for bulking, you got to remember, I need you to eat whatever you can eat.
Mhm. Yeah.
Because if you're bulking, depending on your body weight, I need you eating 3,000, 3,500 calories a day, maybe more than that. And to get that in 4 meals, we're talking about 4 almost 1,000 calorie meals. Now, I just told you that the one before bed can't be that heavy. It doesn't need to be that heavy. And so now you're really looking at 2 good meals, and 2 on the outside. And then you've got over half your calories in those 2 meals, probably a third of your calories in the one after your post-workout meal or your first meal of the day, breakfast in this case. And then your pre-bed meal is going to give you the remainder of your calories, the remaining 17 or 18% of your calories for the day. What you do to bulk, you can do it. You can drink a gallon of milk. You can do the GOMAD program where you're having a liter of milk every couple hours. I don't like that program, but you just got to get your calories in.
Yeah.
This may be a time for a dirty bulk. Maybe a pint of Ben & Jerry's before bed.
I could do that.
Something like that.
Is it possible to bulk during this time?
Yeah, absolutely.
A realistic bulk. I mean, I'm making gains.
Yes, it is possible.
Okay.
The training has to be right,
Okay.
and the calories have to be there.
So
I
it
just
is
told you
possible.
that your body,
In your opinion, is it better to bulk or cut during this time?
I think personally it'd be easier to cut during this time.
Okay.
You can gain a tremendous amount of muscle and fat by eating a ton at those first 2 meals. And I think I've seen when I was researching, I saw stories of people doing that. They were the first couple meals. It's a bit of a party. This is those first 2 are big. I know I can eat enough to bulk.
Mhm.
And if I go a few hours without eating, I get a little grumpy. I know that I can eat enough to bulk. I don't think you get as high quality of a bulk as you would if you did it throughout the day.
Yeah.
I think you can get the same quality of a cut and the same level of muscle maintenance or muscle sparing on an intermittent fasting style cut here as you would on any other kind of cut where we do with you maybe 6-8 meals a day.
Okay.
So I'm not saying one. I am saying one's better than another. I think it would be easier to drop weight or to cut during this process because you have two reasons now not to eat for an extended length of time.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
when you're not eating, you got to burn something.
Yeah. All right, guys. So we don't want to keep this video too long. So what you can do though, if you have any more questions or there's any topics that we didn't hit, please leave a comment below and myself or Clint will answer it. Not a problem, guys. But I hope you guys enjoyed this Q&A about Ramadan. I hope you learned something, and I hope we were able to answer some of your questions that you may have had.
I think for folks that are new to training, you just need to realize that there's plenty of research out there, and there are plenty of folks who would eat or train this way.
Yeah.
Not for religious reasons, because there's science that says you can do it, and in many cases it's better.
Yeah, it's actually good for you.
Yeah, at the end of the month.
This is actually something that can benefit.
Yeah, you'll be more receptive to insulin by the end of the month period.
Yeah, it's not a punishment, or it's not something that you shouldn't, like, oh man, this is coming up. Like, no, this is actually good. It's good for your training. It could benefit your training.
You get a little bit of a reset as far as I'm concerned. I don't have a voice because I went to a horse race this weekend and lost it. And I got back in today. We worked the legs, and I'm sore for taking 5 days off the gym.
Yeah, which is good because we were doing legs for a couple months and not feeling sore at all. Now, I don't know if we weren't working hard enough or what, but it feels great. It feels great when you're sore and you're feeling that sensitivity back because it feels like, oh man, I'm accomplishing something.
That's exactly right. So this could be a great opportunity for a reset. You're definitely going to respond to food better at the end of the month. I promise you that.
Oh yeah. All right, guys, so we're going to wrap it up. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please leave a comment below. Even if you don't have a question, please hit that like button. And if you haven't already, guys, please subscribe, please. We absolutely love you guys, and there'll be more Q&As, more videos like this. If you have any topics you guys would like myself or Clint to hit, we'll do it. We're always up for ideas, guys. Let us know. Whatever you want to see, let us know. We're up for it. This was a pretty risque topic to talk about, I think.
Yeah,
it was very risky because you can say the wrong thing and be disrespectful when you're not actually trying to be. You accidentally say something, and so we had to tread carefully. And we have nothing but respect for all cultures, all religions, anybody's belief. I
agree.
So let us know what you guys would like to see next, and we'll do a video, guys. So we'll see you on the next episode. Peace.
Oh my God. That would be the...
Can't see it, I was manipulated. I had too little through the door.